Hi, I'm Rainer, and welcome to my training room. I am currently at the opposite end of the room from where I have been for the last few videos. Um, Partly because that end of the room, at least at the top level, I have a shell of scenery that runs around all the way to here. And the bottom level, I've been doing work down there. But this end, as you can see, is just pink styrofoam, plywood, track on the roadbed back there. The track all works, but I want to do a little bit more down here to make it look a little bit better in videos and to get going on where I'm going to be putting the buildings and things like that. So the plan is for this side over here to have a smaller, like a village scene. There's going to be a little lake in here, kind of out of sight of the camera right now. But this area is going to have a lumber mill. That's the plan anyway. And I have the old Cornerstone Mountain Lumber Company sawmill sitting up here, a kit to build. And so I'm going to try to fit that in here. And there is a siding coming off the main line right here that's going to be extended into the sawmill. But one of the first things I need to do right now is, if you look on the other side of that plywood roadbed, there's just a hole down to the next deck below. So what I'm going to do is start on building up some scenery there. So I'll have to get a stool to actually reach there because it's a long way back there. And the same as I did on the other end, I have to build the scenery from the back corner outwards. So the first thing I need to do is do what I want to do with the scenery on the other side of the track. So I'm going to start working on that now. And the idea is going to be basically I'm going to build it up with some pink styrofoam up there. And then I'll use some plaster cloth and build a shell on top of that. I don't think I'm going to build a hillside like I did at the other end. This side, I'm going to make it a little flatter and probably put a little building up there or something. So we'll see how that turns out. But anyway, I'm going to record this on video and we'll see what happens. So the first thing I did was got a piece of pink styrofoam, just set it in place at the top. And then I got some green masking tape and kind of taped it into place so it wouldn't move around because I needed to cut it to the right shape to be able to fit into the corner, to fit right tight into the corner and to fit in beside the plywood roadbed. So then I got underneath with a Sharpie, kind of crawled in on between the two decks and then reached up and then traced a black line on the bottom of the styrofoam and then cut it out to the right shape to fit in there in between the track and the walls. Brought it back, did a quick test fit, made sure that it actually fit in there okay. And then I got some other styrofoam I had that was actually from a project I did insulating a trailer. It's just a white styrofoam with the foil on one side and green plastic on the other side. So I used that and cut that in and set that on the side boards of the bench work underneath just to create a platform or something to support that pink styrofoam at the top. Once I cut those pieces, test fit them all in place, I got the glue gun and glued them into place with the hot glue gun. Then I set the pink styrofoam back up on top of it and figured out what I needed to do to taper the edges down so I didn't have a 90-degree sharp edge coming from the pink styrofoam down to the track. So I kind of tapered all the edges and set that into place. Once I had it looking like I wanted to, I hot glued that in. And then I just used some more scraps of pink styrofoam to glue to the walls just for support on the really narrow sections up to the window, kind of the corner of the window, and as well as going from the other end over to the existing scenery that I had already completed. Once that was all glued in, I then went and got some plaster cloth and a foil pan with some water in it and just started cutting some strips of plaster cloth and putting them into place, just kind of down to the edge of the track, onto the roadbed, onto the side, and onto the styrofoam, and work that in kind of just to cover all of the styrofoam. And then I just left that to dry and harden overnight. Now, if you've ever used this plaster cloth, when it dries, it usually has a bunch of little holes in it and things like that. So what I like to do is then I use some Sheetrock 20, which is just drywall compound. It's a fast setting drywall compound that you buy in a big bag, mix it up with some water, but I mix it really pretty watery, not the usual thickness you'd use for patching holes. I mix it a little bit, kind of a soupy mix, and then apply it with a paintbrush. So before I put it on, I covered all the tracks with some masking tape to make sure that I didn't end up brushing this stuff onto the rails and in between the ties and everything else, because that just makes a big mess that I'd have to clean up later. So I just brushed this on, covered the whole area that I'd just done with this liquidy, watery drywall compound, and again just left it to set and harden overnight so it was nice and dry by the next day. So I have the basic scenery shell done from here all the way to over there. The last bit that I just did was painting it with some just household flat latex paint. I think it's warm spice brown or something that I picked ages ago because it looked like dirt. Anyway, all I do is I put a heavy coat of latex paint on it and then sprinkle a little bit of greenish and brownish ground foam on top of it, and it just gives it a little bit of texture. And that's it. I don't glue it on or anything because I sprinkle it onto the wet paint and it just sticks. If you look back in my older videos, I will put the link up there for how I did all of this stuff. I did have my GoPro set up to record me painting it and putting the foam on it. For some reason, my GoPro decided to freeze and didn't record that section. And well, I didn't notice it until after I was done the painting, the foam, and cleaned my paintbrush. So anyway, that part is done now for scenery shell. I need to touch up the blue paint on the walls because, well, I made a mess of the bottom edge of the walls, but that's not a big deal. I have some of this paint, so I'm going to do that once the brown dries enough so it's not dissolving with the blue paint. And then the next thing I decided to do is in that corner is I have this building that I built, scratch built this years ago. I don't remember when I did it, just built it out of styrene, and it has these little grain of wheat light bulbs inside, so it's illuminated and everything else. So I'm thinking of taking this building and putting it in the back corner and then putting some trees around it. So to do that, I need to build some trees. So last night while I was sitting here, I took some twine and cut it into sections and shredded it to start making some trees. So I think I'm going to go out into the garage now and try to put together a few trees, and we'll see how that turns out. I've got to wait for this paint to dry anyway before I can put the building up there and things like that. So I think I'm going to try to make some trees for it and see how that turns out, so we can just kind of get a whole scene set up there. So this building will be kind of tucked into a little grove of trees on the other side of the track, or that's the plan anyway. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so I got some trees made and I have them planted. Some of them are over here. Some of them are back there. I didn't make all of these trees, so these trees along the front line here. Some of the trees that you see over there, probably 8, 9 of them back in there, and another few along here. I made those. The rest were a mix of trees that I had bought online. Some of them were just these cheap little trees that I got on AliExpress or ordered them online. These guys in here, I don't like to use a lot of the pre-made trees or all of the pre-made trees because they look too perfect. They look some like manicured garden, little perfect Christmas trees, and real trees in nature are not like that. They're kind of rough and uneven, and they've got a lot of branches hanging in different directions and broken branches and things like that. So if you ever look around in nature, trees are not perfect, and a lot of the pre-made new trees you buy are just a little too perfect. At least that's been my experience. However, what I did was I used a mix of them because I didn't need to make that many trees, and that way end up with a little bit of variety in the color and the size and things like that. And it seems to work pretty well because it kind of, my kind of scraggly trees take away from the perfection of the other trees, and it just kind of blends in pretty well. So going back to how I made those trees, what I start out with is just a spool of twine. I cut off some lengths about that long, and then I just unravel them. As you can see in this little quick clip here, I just unravel them into kind of the separate strands and just put them all into one container. And then went outside because I'm going to be spraying glue and spraying paint, things like that. And I cut off some lengths of copper wire, and the taller the tree, the longer the copper wire you need to have. And then I just have a block of wood with a cut off screw in it sticking up. I take the wire, put a couple of wraps around that, and then I take some of the pieces of the twine, spread them out in there. I usually take a little bundle of the pieces of the twine that I had separated, and just kind of pull them through my hands until I get them all kind of, the ends are roughly matched up. I'm holding them by the middle, put them in the wire, spread them out, and then I use a cordless drill to just put a twist on the copper wire. Once that's done, take the twine that's now kind of looks like a little bit of a ragged looking bottle brush, and I just take that, straighten it out as best as I can, trim them with scissors to make it kind of tree shaped, and then I just use pieces of old styrofoam, put them in there, give them a good shot of flat black paint that just kind of seals them up, makes them all look dark to begin with. Let that dry for a while. Then I use some 3M spray adhesive, give it a quick spray, and I sprinkle on the foliage material. The foliage that I'm using is some stuff that I got from Model Builder Supply in Aurora, Ontario. Seems to work pretty well. I'll show a quick clip of it on here, of the bag that it came in. And then depending on what I want the tree to look like, I will give it different amounts of a quick spray of green paint, and it just kind of ties everything in together. For some of my older kind of black spruce looking trees, I would actually give them quite a bit of the dark green paint. For some of the other ones, I just give it a quick dusting. It just kind of ties everything together. And then what I found the last few times I've been making trees is I sprinkle just a little bit of some short, like a little bit brighter green static grass on it, and it just gives it a little bit of a kind of like a highlight or a brighter detail in the ends of the branches. So I just sprinkle that on, and it gets stuck to the wet paint, and I shake that off, and then I let it dry. That's about all I do to make the trees. They're nothing beautiful. They're kind of scraggly looking things, but I think they work okay. So that's what these are here, and roughly half the trees back there are those as well. So I've got this back part looking pretty good. I still need to add some details. The building has wires that hang down below the layout right now, so it has lights in it and light on the front. Probably added some more details, some people, maybe some vehicles, things like that. But for now, it's looking pretty good back there. Now I want to start working on this front part. But what's going to be going in here is a lumber mill. So that's going to be my next project, is to build that building. I've actually pulled it out. I've got it on the workbench over there. So I'm going to be building that kit. I will be making a video of that as well. And I want to get that built so that I can place the building up here to figure out the location of where everything needs to be, so that then when I put in the scenery, the hillside going up to that track up there and any trees and everything else, that they don't interfere with the building, so I know I can fit the building in. That's the beauty of working on a model railroad. You can build the building first and then build the terrain around it. Whereas in the real world, you're dealing with the terrain, and you have to build a building to fit in there. So we kind of do it backwards in model railroading sometimes. But anyway, that's where I am with this. Hopefully this gives you some ideas on how to quickly finish up a corner. That was an empty hole down the other side. I now have ground cover, terrain, kind of grass looking stuff, trees, a building, and it looks a lot more finished. If you want to see more, make sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you next time.